It's fine. No. Oh no. Oh no.
This is the Team Objection Podcast for November 15th, 2022, episode 551. Couple apologies and an announcement up front. Number one, Sean's not here yet. I don't know why I'm apologizing for him, but I am. Number two, I probably sound super congested. It's because I am. I don't know if it's my allergies going haywire or what, because I feel completely fine, but I've been kind of stuffy the last couple of days. Literally no other symptoms. It's weird. But sorry, I'm probably I sound like I'm talking like this, and I would like to not do that, but I can't.
I'll join you in solidarity.
There you go. It'll just be the worst sounding podcast you've ever heard. And then the announcement, of course, if you missed our show 2 weeks ago, we were off last week for the election, which we're going to talk about tonight. But we're doing our best games ever list. We're redoing it. It's been a decade, so finally it seemed like the perfect time to jump back in. I talked about it at length there, but the Reader's Digest version, Dave has echo. Yeah, I have to figure out why video is causing that. We'll solve that in a second. He's not talking right now. If you would like to join us, you can. Anybody out there. We're going to accept entries from just about anybody who listens to the show regularly or the viewers on YouTube. All you have to do is send an email to @thebuzzershow@gmail.com. That's @thebuzzershow@gmail.com with your picks. How many picks? Well, we're doing top 25 as a group, but send me however many you like. I'd like it to be a multiple of 5. Don't send me like your top 13. But, if you only have 10 that you really, really feel strongly about, send me 10. That's fine. Don't fill out a list and then just fluff the bottom to get it to 25. If you feel super passionately about more than 25, you can send them my way and we'll see if we include them. But basically, your picks for the best games ever. And the one note, we're saying best. Almost everything else we do for our list are usually like favorites. So it's just the stuff that we like. In this case, we're actually kind of trying to take a more objective approach to it as much as you can in a subjective field. So just weigh that, I'm not saying don't pick your favorite games, but if one of your favorite games just isn't all that good, maybe weigh it appropriately, if that all makes sense.
So I have to ask, as I clear my throat from my congestion, you said Sean isn't here yet. You're apologizing for him yet. I'm confused by the yet part. He lives over there, not far.
Yeah, excellent question. Fair play to you. And I don't have an answer.
Good. Well, we'll move on with the better show without him. Addition by subtraction, everyone.
I don't know what has changed about video to make it so that you might be echoing. I'm going to try turning this down a bit. Or maybe I'm just going to fix it live because he's not here yet anyways. So, Dave, if you talk, what happens?
I'll write it and we'll do it live. That's what I'm saying.
I think that should have fixed the echo. Doug, if you would please, since you are not currently banning Hitler, let me know if Dave is no longer echoing.
What about banning Mussolini? Is that...
Okay. I did not have to toggle the mute in scene option in video before, but it doesn't matter. We've solved the issue. The audio will be pristine.
Huzzah.
Let's start.
Huzzah. Okay.
Been a busy couple weeks. The election, which again is coming up later, was the primary focus for me. Obviously, election night for a newspaper. Pretty busy, even in a midterm. But even outside of that, Dave was also busy that night. Neither one of us could have made the show. And I also had a tournament that I kind of alluded to 2 weeks ago. I'm wearing the same shirt as 2 weeks ago. Weirdly enough, it's clean shut up.
Did you do laundry? Are you sure?
I did. In fact, it's more likely in a 2-week span that I'll end up wearing the same shirt than a week, because I usually had to do laundry about every 2 weeks. If I need something sooner, obviously, it's a different story. But for run-of-the-mill shirts, because I have 25 of these things that I could wear in rotation. So, weirdly enough, I'm not a hobo, or am I? But Dave, let's start with yours, because I've talked enough in the intro. What was New York like, and why were you there?
Well, I didn't. Oh God, I don't think I've mentioned it. I know I mentioned before of Courtney took a focus on running in the past few years, trying to just distance running. So about 4 years ago, almost, she ran her first half marathon. Then got pregnant with James and had to kind of skip that. But in the last couple of years, she's run another 2 half marathons, and then always swore up and down to herself she'd never run a marathon until she then entered the lottery for the New York City Marathon and got into that by complete luck of the draw, and said, oh shit, I never thought I'd run a marathon, and now I have a marathon coming up in 5 months. So a lot of training happened, a lot of running, a lot of getting up early in the morning, and to beat the Phoenix heat over the summer for training. And but I can say that we traveled to New York a couple days early before the marathon. She finished about 7.5 hours, which isn't an elite time by any means, but also better than a time that I could do. So I am very proud in many ways. She made it 26 miles through all 5 boroughs of New York. I got to go with her, stopped in a few different places, and really take part of the whole New York environment, which, I mean, anybody's been to Manhattan knows it's just energy. There's just an energy to that whole city. So it was really cool to go there. Courtney had never been before, which was really cool to be able to take her there. And I got to, during the race day, go around and do it a few different places and try to meet up with her and see her as she ran by, because I would hop on the subways and meet up. So I got to go outside the Barclays Center, which was one of the stops. Got to go right near Central Park, which was near the end. So that was a really cool part. And then we stayed for a few more days afterward. Race was on Sunday. We stayed through Wednesday, saw a Broadway show, went to the top of the Empire State Building, kind of all the touristy type of stuff since she'd never been. But I was told a lot of people that I would, if I had a different life with no kids and, what a different life I would have ran, I would have lived in that city in a heartbeat. I know a lot of people are like, big city, I don't know, couldn't live there. Man, I'm all about big cities. I love them. It's so great.
So about 2 hours, 10 minutes was the winning time. And this is not to throw shade at Courtney in any way. Anybody who completes the marathon is doing great. But I'm just starting to bring this up to say that there's freaks that run this. It's one of the biggest, maybe the Boston Marathon's bigger, but it's one of the biggest marathon events in the world. I was following it because we had several Flagstaff people in the event. They finished, I think, 12th, 14th, somewhere in the 30s. There were some notable people from the area who obviously, there's a big running community up here because of the altitude for training. So I was kind of keeping tabs on it for other reasons, as well as just being like, oh yeah, Dave's wife's in it too, so we'll check it out. I can't even get my head around the idea of finishing a marathon in 2 hours. That is just ludicrous to me. Now, I've never been a runner, don't like it, never will. But 2 hours for 26 miles, what the hell?
What I try to think of, I think the winning time this year is 2 hours, 3 minutes, somewhere in there, maybe. Regardless, it's stupidly fast. The world record was recently broken under 2 hours, recently by a guy named Eliud Kipchoge, which I don't know how you, the hard part about imagining running a marathon is 2 hours is 26.2 miles. That means that you are running 13.1 miles per hour, which I'm not 100% sure I can hit on a dead sprint nowadays in my life. Not sure. Maybe. But not for 2 hours, that's for sure.
No, I could maybe in a full sprint, everything I've got, get to that speed, and then about 50 yards later be like, well, I'm dead.
And I'm done.
I died. Huh.
And they do that for 2 hours straight. It's mind-blowing. I mean, the women's champion was 2.5 hours, which is, again, just what? I had another friend of mine who was a coworker, took a different position, so he's not anymore, but he was a coworker. He ran it as well, finished in 4.5 hours, and was disappointed in himself. And I'm like, 4.5 hours is still pretty good there, buddy. I'm pretty proud of you. I can't do 4.5 hours, that's for sure. But now the fun thing really was about it, and I'll do a weird plug now. If anyone has an Instagram, she actually has a running Instagram that you can kind of look this up. It's run.court.run. That's her Instagram page that she posts exclusively her running stuff. So it's kind of a cool thing if you want to see some photos and stuff. But the coolest thing was she was just really emotional when she crossed the finish line, to the point where it got captured on the photographers, where she was just hand on her chest, crying. There's a video of her kind of crying when she got the medal on her. It was just, the mental aspect of running is so much more than the physical aspect of it. I mean, most people could bring their bodies to do it, I think, if they really wanted to, but it's that mental drive that's just something else that I don't have.
It's both, really. Not to undersell your point, because you're 100% correct. It's just, especially, again, I'm looking at the elite runners just because that's what we have up here.
Yeah.
But as much of it as it is just the mental endurance to train for such an undertaking and then execute it, but then all it takes is one little niggling injury, one little sprain, your heel gets sore from overtraining, an ankle doesn't quite feel right, and all of a sudden that's it. Everything you've worked for so long can be thrown off. And sure, that's true of a lot of sporting events, like, but this is all or nothing here. You train for this as like the solitary event. For some people maybe run 2 or 3 marathons in a year, but still, you build up for all of this and it can all go sideways. And then for the recreational folks, again, just finishing it is an undertaking. Some people are just going to walk the course. That's fine. That's still deserving of respect too. It's a 26-mile walk. Just sit and think about that for a second. So for me, it's just kind of cool. And it's nice to see that the community always rallies together. Obviously, a couple of years, especially 2020, there were almost no marathons. If there were, they were virtual because of the pandemic. But to see the communities come back together, again, I don't care about running one iota, but I think it's super cool still.
I will say being in the crowd, being not a participant in the race, but just being involved in the crowds, it is amazing for the entire 26-mile course. And now New York City, of course, is the most populous city in the country, so it makes sense. But the entire race course for 12 hours that day is packed with people. There's always people. Some places are more packed than others, but there is people on the race course cheering the entire time. And it's really cool to watch the running community be so supportive because they know how much of a grind it is and how much of an undertaking it is. I feel like that lends itself to positivity of like, oh, you're going to do this? Okay, well, we know that you need help mentally. So it's great. I like positivity, and I know sometimes it's just, sometimes people fake it, whatever, but it's nice to see positivity in the community.
Feels more rare these days.
Yeah, it sure does.
So not to have you mansplain, but you're the only person here. So what was her feedback afterwards? Was it easier than she thought, harder than she thought? Were there ever moments she was like, I'm not sure I'm going to finish? Did it go smoother than she expected? Because, sometimes in training you build things up where you're like, all right, this is fine now, but when the day comes and it matters, it might be different. So, like, what was the experience like afterwards? What did she say?
So it was interesting. During training, she had ran into a bit of a bout of plantar fasciitis in her foot, which is no good, really bad. So she had figured out different ways of like making sure she had orthotics in her shoes to help that. She would tape her legs to relieve that. But we actually found relief, strangely enough, in using a rolling pin on her calf muscles, which helped loosen those, which helped loosen the tendons, and it actually fixed a lot of the foot pain. It was weird. So foot pain, strangely enough, wasn't an issue during the race. But during the race, she had a couple times where she was just like, what am I doing? I hate this. I hate everything. And her knee kind of locked up a little bit around mile 20. So she unfortunately had to walk the remaining 6 miles at about that point, which is that's a lot of, it's the hard part about running is it's hard to run, but the hard part about walking a marathon is it takes forever. So then there's that mental aspect again. So she would say that it was harder than she thought, and we knew it was going to be hard. But the funny thing was the day after, right after, we had to go down to the subway to get back to our hotel, and she was struggling to get down the stairs because she was just so sore and everything. But about the next day, she's like, man, I don't know if I'm going to do that again. About 2 days later, she's like, it was kind of warm in New York this time. It was about 75 degrees for the heat. I think I could do better next time. Mm-hmm. And yesterday she sent me a picture of a registration for the Honolulu Marathon. So I'm like, oh, great. I'm fucked.
Yeah, that's better, though. I mean, obviously, New York's New York, and it's great, and it's a big marathon. But, I mean, Hawaii, like...
I mean, if you're talking about heat, it's going to be hotter in Hawaii than it was New York. That's for sure.
Yeah, no matter easy to predict. It's going to be in the mid-70s. Humid. Pretty known commodity, I think.
But, I mean, really, the cool part, is going back to the community part, is that through her Instagram page, she had, conversed with other runners and things like that found her page and stuff like that. She actually was able to meet up with one of the people that she's talked to on through Instagram, and they actually walked the remaining like 10 miles together, which is really cool. So they support each other because they were both hitting a point where like, oh God, I can't do this. And I was just waiting for the text from Courtney to say, I'm quitting. And I would have said, you're fucking not quitting. You're going to regret it the rest of your life if you quit. So unless you can't walk anymore, keep going. And unfortunately,
you're so hurt that you're risking some kind of long-term injury.
Exactly. Yeah.
Walk it, take it at your own pace. Again, if this was, there are some types of races where it'd be like, you can't do that. You can't just hang around on the track for the next 3 hours while you go at your own pace. They're like, oh, we have other events. Get out of here. But because this is meant to be a test of endurance, again, the expectation is you could walk the whole thing, and that's fine. The last thing I was going to ask was crowd-wise. Obviously, she was training and doing a lot of stuff solo, just out on her own, making sure she wasn't like killed on the side of the road when she was out there at 4:30 in the morning. Yep. What was the crowd like? I mean, I imagine it was encouraging, but like, was it overwhelming at first? Did she like ignore it by like the first few miles when they were over? Like, what was that experience like?
So okay, I'll go back to one thing real quickly. You said just about endurance. The last finish of the final finisher, I think, was at 15 and a half hours. So
Dawn
holy
to
shit.
dusk. Well, more than that because it's getting dark this time of year.
Exactly. And the cool part though is a lot of the elite runners will come out to watch the final finisher and cheer them on. So it's just kind of a cool, again, community.
Yeah.
As far as the crowd goes, it was. She said at first it was cool. You start out on what's called the Verrazano Bridge, which goes from Staten Island and Brooklyn. No crowd on that. You come off that bridge, and then there's crowds there in Brooklyn. And she said for a while it was pretty cool. And then after a while, when it didn't stop and there were still people, sometimes some of the, especially because she was a later start being a slower runner than the elite runners and the faster runners, they had taken down some of the barriers that were there in the morning. And so the crowd just kind of started doing this after a while. And so all of a sudden you had like, instead of the entire street to run, you had one lane to run on and something. And it's like, okay, this is getting really narrow and kind of claustrophobic. And everyone's really happy and cheering you on, giving you high fives and all that. But it does get overwhelming at times. So
I mean, 26 miles of high fives is an awful lot of high fives. You know, I love the encouragement. A high five's great. I don't know if I need to be giving 4,000 of them.
Yeah, it was. I will say, if anyone has the opportunity, what the biggest takeaway I think Courtney had was one. I mean, marathons are stupidly hard, but two, there were what she called angels on the side that provided information, volunteers who gave extra water, who gave paper towels to dry off your sweat, who were just there on the course to help out. And so one of the coolest things she says she wants to do is if she's not going to run it again, she wants to go back and be one of those volunteers to do something and help people out because it helped her so much. And honestly, just watching from a crowd perspective, if anyone has the opportunity to do it, it's worth it. It's phenomenal. Get in there. You get, especially if you take the subway around, you can see the whole city and just kind of watch runners pushing themselves to the limit.
Volunteering's not only very helpful and, you know, selfless in a way, but it also kind of guarantees you have great seats. You know, that's not the reason she would do it, but it's a nice byproduct where it's like, we have the World Championships coming to Flagstaff for disc golf next year, which we're going to transition to in a second here. And if I have time, which is a massive if given my line of work, but I'm hoping to volunteer to help out because maybe I'm going to be like on the course keeping score for one of the main cards of the championship down the stretch. Like that would be cool. I could be on the course walking with the groups. So like I would do it because we want to have a good showing and make sure that this seems like a good venue for future blah, blah, blah. But I would get something out of it too. And that's the perfect way to volunteer. I mean, look, you volunteer just to make sure that other people are getting what they need. Again, I'm not saying take the selfish approach, but the fact that you can benefit too, all it does is make a feedback loop where you volunteer and give your services more. Perfect.
Exactly. And you get to see more of the runners on the course having a good seat. Like the guy that I saw running the course who was wearing a Harlem Globetrotters jersey, juggling 2 juggling balls and dribbling a basketball for the entire course. So you'll just see some bullshit like that.
Yeah, there were some celebrities there. I forget who, but I remember seeing a handful of names.
Ashton Kutcher was there. Ellie Kemper was there.
I don't know if I saw her. Interesting.
Yeah, I saw she was there. I actually followed her. There's an app that you can track runners, and I followed her on there. There was a David Robinson that ran. It wasn't me, obviously, but there was a David Robinson.
You're doing the Spider-Man point. Like...
I actually followed him on the app. I'm like, oh, how fast am I going to run this thing? There's a few other celebrities around there.
So, anyways, cool spectacle. Congrats to her for making it. I told her myself, but we'll say it in the on-air segment.
Yeah.
About a week before that, I was in Austin, Texas, for the NADGT. National Amateur Disc Golf Tour National Championships. I'm not going to go like day by day on the recap, but just to give an overall sense, I flew in Monday. Tournament started Wednesday, ran Wednesday through Saturday. Flew in Monday, and then went right from the airport to go practice a course. And we got hit by like a monsoons type like downpour for 20 minutes, which was, I mean, obviously it's still the Southwest, so I'm not like, what is this? But, it's like, wait, but our monsoon's over. Like, in Arizona, we're done with that. That's like September 15th. That's in the rear view. So we had to like run into a Wendy's to get shelter.
Sure, this is a Wendy's.
Yeah, exactly. It was actually a Wendy's for once, just to grab lunch and stay dry. But went out to practice one of the courses that day and then played the other two because each round was at a different course, which was neat in one way, just to get to experience different types of courses. Each presented its own challenges. And also I realized not my preferred method. I definitely like when at least there's 2 and not 3 or 4 sites, because then you could improve between rounds. I can be like, oh, I threw that disc on this hole and that was stupid. So in the next round, I'm going to throw this one. Or I've tried this gap and that didn't go very well, so I'm going to try this gap. So it didn't favor, I think, what one of my strengths is. But either way, Wednesday came, and the tricky part about this tournament and almost every tournament that's not in the Pro Tour is it can still kind of just feel like a practice round because you're still just out with people on the cart. Yeah, you're keeping official score and there's this leaderboard and stuff, but like at this level, we don't have crowds. There's not galleries. There's nothing that really fundamentally changes about the experience other than the feeling you have inside. So I'm not unfamiliar with tournaments, and one of this size didn't really faze me all that much. I'm not going to be like, oh, I was starstruck on the first tee, but it did still feel a little bit different. I think it was more so flying out than it was playing the first round where I was like, huh, like I'm actually doing a thing now and not just driving up the street to a course I can play any day I want to. So that was kind of cool. As far as the tournament, I played the first round and finished 1 over, which was a little above my rating. I think it was like 930. Was still mad when I left the course because I bogeyed the last 2 holes. One of them was on one of the hardest holes on the course, and I threw an excellent third shot to give myself a chance to save par, and it ended up behind a tree, and it just nicked a branch and then chained out. So it's like, you son of a bitch. Like, either one of those things doesn't happen, and it's fine. And then I missed the island on hole 18, which is the massive mistake you can't do. Go to the drop zone, jump putt, hit the band, take a 4. So I walked off being like, 1 over, still a pretty good score. I think I was 6 back of the lead, but I was like, man, that should have at least been an even. So I wasn't like beating myself up. I'm still relatively happy with it. Second round, here's the truth. I played the best of the week in the practice round Monday, which was not a good sign. That's not when you want to leave your best golf on the table. So by the time Thursday came around, I was kind of struggling. I started 5 over through 7, which you don't have to be a disc golf or golf aficionado to know that's not ideal. And was proud of myself because I clawed my way all the way back to even by the end of the round. Now, that was a course where I really needed to shoot under par. It was the easiest of the 3, and you could tell from the field and how they moved that was the case. But still, being 5 over through 7, under par starts to feel awfully far off in the distance, only having 12 holes left. So it was nice to be able to get back to even. I was really pleased with, I had 4 birdies in a row, and then I threw like this really awesome skip shot on 18. Like I crushed my drive and it went too far left, and I was like, oh God. So I had to throw like a low skip shot that started straight and then went on like a right angle around some trees, and I got to like 15 feet and made the putt. So walked off feeling pretty pleased. And it's funny because that's really a worse score. Yes, even and 1 over, but again, relative to the course, I should have been more upset, but it's just the way it finishes sometimes leaves a taste in your mouth. And then Friday it poured. Just absolutely garbage weather. A couple hours west of us had a tornado warning. Like, it was so bad. It was never close to us. We were never like, oh my God, but it poured all night. It was pouring in the morning. Tee times got delayed by about an hour. We eventually had to head over to the course because we couldn't wait for further updates in case they decided to send people out. So my folks stayed behind. They eventually came out and washed once we started, but they were like, well, if we go out there now, what if there's 2 hours delay? So the course was soaked. And look, I can't even really use it as an excuse to a certain extent because A, we all played through it, and B, the morning people had it worse. The people that were further down the leaderboard, because I was like tied for 58th going into the third day. There was 320 people in this field. So the people further down obviously went out earlier, as is tradition. They were playing in the pouring rain, and then the wind that followed it when it slowed down, and then even when it stopped, the course was already wet. So like, they had the worst of it. I shot a 9 over, which sounds terrible and kind of is. However, a 9 over was still 900 rated. So while I'm not going to go into the ratings again, just know that 900 is like above average. So the fact that the 9 over was a 900 plus tells you how hard it was out there on an already difficult course. I also took a 9 over because I took a triple bogey trying to make the cut. So I tried to birdie the hardest hole in the course. And it turns out that was a bad choice. Now, I was the right choice because if I had parred out, I would have missed the cut. I needed the birdie there to make it, so I have no regrets about it. It makes my score and my rating slightly worse, but I probably should have tried to be aggressive earlier in retrospect. The problem is, of course, you're watching live leaderboards, and the cards behind me, further up the leaderboard, aren't in yet, so we're just kind of guessing. But nobody ended up birdieing that hole in the entire field. So I might have been a fool's endeavor. But so even if I'd finished at +6, I would have missed the cut by 1 stroke. But I'm happy with the experience. Did I get the finish I wanted? No, my goal was to make the cut. That was top 60 out of the 300-plus players in the field. But I think I played at my level. I'd never had one round where I got hot, and I needed it to make the cut. Because there's some really good players in that field. Obviously, this was the best of the best from around the country. If you were putting us by rating, I should not have made the cut if we all played to our performance. I played to my performance. I didn't make the cut. But I played pretty well. I still made the top 100. I was like 92nd or something, tied 92nd. And I had a lot of fun. I've talked for like the last 6 minutes, so I'll shut up now.
It's all right. So what you've taught me out of this whole thing is that my strategy of just throwing it at the hole every single time is a bad strategy. It's like, well, let's see. The hole's 350 feet away. I can make that.
It's true, especially on the last course that we played Friday, because there's out of bounds everywhere. There's really tight tunnel. Like, you think Flagstaff, you've played here, has some lines that you have to hit down, like, there's trees and there's like a 10, 20-foot gap. This is like, here's a 5-foot gap, and it's so dense that it might as well be out of bounds. There's some actual out of bounds, but also if you kick to this side, you're going to wish it was out of bounds because you're going to be playing from so many fucking trees, you're not going to be able to see the hole from there anyways. So it's like, you had to keep it in the fairway. I did a pretty good job, but I had 2 bad kicks. One of them was my own fault. One of them was unlucky, and it cost me major strokes. I also was only one of 4 birdies on the second hole, hardest hole on the course. So I still had some things that I could take away from it. In fact, I think there's a video of it, of me making the putt from like 60 feet. So like, I had plenty of things to be happy with. Am I slightly disappointed? I mean, I guess more so because I just wanted to play Saturday. Not because I was going to win the thing. I was so far back. Even if I'd made the cut, I would have been 14 back in the lead. So like, that wasn't happening, but just the chance to play one more day would have been cool. But either way, I was happy with the trip. My uncle and my parents came with me. So it was really nice to just have a support system, and then we were just hanging out at the house, spending time together. So I really enjoyed it. I don't know if I would do it again. I'm going to try and qualify again next year, and then I can always make the choice because it was expensive, and the prizes aren't that worth it unless you're really, really, really good. Like the very top division could turn pro, and top prize for that was $6,500. But if I made the cut, I would have gotten like $30 in credit. So was that worth $1,000 worth of plane tickets and an Airbnb? I mean, from a financial perspective, no. But from an experience, at least once, yeah, it was definitely worth it.
Well, if nothing else, the idea, I mean, in a way, it's similar of just like something like the New York Marathon. You're on the same course as not the best of the best, really, in all senses, but some of the best in the world, Like, you're on the same course as people who are so phenomenal at this, and you get to see what it takes. You get to see what it means to be at that top echelon. And, too often when you're younger, too often when you are good at a local level, you're like, well, I'm pretty good. Yeah, I got this. I'm just fine. And you see what's out there and you're like, oh, that's what it takes. Mm-hmm. And it's humbling and also really kind of cool in some ways to see like, wow, that's what's out there. I think I could get there, or wow, I've got a long way to go. And then it kind of wakes you up to it.
What's nice is I don't shy away from the challenge. I like it. And I'm going to be in the highest division next year. I already was in it for one tournament and did okay. Because the first 5 tournaments I played, I was top 3 in all of them and won 2. Like, now that's not to say I didn't have challenges or like I had to play well. I didn't like crush the field. I was about the right level at that time. But I have gone from probably about an 850 rated player when I played that first tournament last July. I'm now 928. And 928 is not like, oh my God, it's so good. Because again, all the people who turn pro are usually 1,000 plus. But I also turned 40 in a little over 2 years. And when that happens, I don't need to be 1,000 rated to be really good. If I can keep getting better and then just kind of maintain and not like have a huge decline as I get older, I could still turn pro when I turn 40. That was a goal I mentioned 1.5 years ago. It's still within my reach because there's going to be a point where I plateau. I'm not just going to keep getting better. Like, there's going to be a point where my skill gap hits a wall and I have to figure out, like, can I get better? Or is it just that I'm old now? I can't throw as far as some of the younger players in the field. Like, what's going to happen there? We're not there yet. We haven't hit that glass ceiling, but I'm still excited to find out. And now it's like, okay, I'm about to enter my off season because we're going to have snow and bad weather and, cold, which is not fun to play in. But I have some things I'll work on. I have a couple of things I want to get better at in particular, and next year I'm going to keep playing in tournaments and trying to keep getting better because I know I'm not as good as I could be yet. I don't know what that limit is, but I know I haven't hit it. I know there's ways I can get better.
Well, I've got a partial solution for you. You can go right there and sleep on that and just come down to Phoenix and practice all you want because the weather's perfect down here right now.
I'm torn. I really should be playing in more events outside of the area. It's just tough with the job I have. Where it's like, if it's a multi-day, if it's a one-day tournament, like whatever, there's not a huge commitment because then it's like, okay, it's going to be a few hours. Even if it's 2 rounds, okay, it's a chunk of a day. But all the good tournaments are usually 2 or 3 days. And it's better that way, to be honest, because then you get in all the rounds and it feels like a big deal. But then it's like, okay, so now I got to figure out how to get out of work on a Friday afternoon to travel to wherever, Phoenix or like Sholo. I played that one tournament. Travel there, figure out accommodations, figure out how to work in between rounds. And it's like, now I'm not focused as much. It's just, God. So I do want to play more tournaments next year, and I'll hit you up if that ends up being the case, just because, I would like to do that in Phoenix when the weather is nice. And then even then, it's like, okay, so the weather's great in Phoenix, but if I get caught down here because it snows, then what? Am I screwed for work that way? Like, it's annoying, but it's also some excuses. I need to be traveling to more tournaments because that's going to be the way I sharpen the most.
You just need to quit your job. That's really what I'm hearing out of all of this is just
well,
going, they say you got to go for your dreams, right? That's what people who succeeded at that say.
I joked because in my head I was like, I won both weekend leagues, not this past weekend, but the one before, just casual ones with the club up here that have like 20 to 30 people. Won the Saturday one and the Sunday one. And then I was like, okay, so I won $15 and $20 because it was double, so it was split. It was 40, but 20 apiece. It's like a $5 entry, so it's whatever. I'm not doing it for the money, but I was like, all right, I made $35 by winning both these events this weekend. So that's 2 hours of minimum wage in Flagstaff. Fuck, I guess I'm never going to make a living out of this.
It's kind of depressing, but I don't know. That's depressing in a way when you're like, man, I could be the best, and not really be that rich comparatively like a basketball player or a golfer or something like that. But on the flip side, it's much easier to be a professional at this sport, so that's kind of cool in its own way.
The fact that it's even possible compared to like a golf where, at my best, my absolute best, maybe I was like an 8 handicap. Maybe. And that was when I was still playing regularly. But like now I'm already in the top, like the 85th percentile of disc golfers everywhere at all levels, not even just in the divisions I'm in right now. So like, it is kind of neat that it is a possibility. In fact, if I had any regrets, it's like my dad tried to get me into this a long time ago. And when I played Ultimate, I didn't want to because they fly so differently. Mm-hmm. And you have to throw them completely opposite in a lot of ways. Now, some of the footwork, timing, mechanics, like there were definitely advantages when I switched. So I'm not saying it's all negative, but trying to juggle both. And, we won 3 titles at Ultimate Frisbee in college. Like, it wasn't like we were doing nothing. So at the time, I was like, no, I don't really. And one time, I even tried to play a round of disc golf with an Ultra Star, the Ultimate disc. Went poorly.
I would imagine.
Yeah, it doesn't fit in the basket very well. It's giant.
No.
So I wish, like, I wonder how good I could have been if I had started this journey at 25 instead of 35. But that's a fool's errand at this point. It's in the past. I don't regret it. But I just kind of wonder, like, man, if I could have been this good before the pandemic boom when the sport really took off, I might have been able to go pro.
So my son's 6. What you're saying is live vicariously and force him to do it. Got it.
I mean, a 17-year-old just won the U.S. national title this year. So, yeah, which the kid is on a meteoric rise. I mean, he's already in the conversation as one of the best players in the world. He's not in the top 5, but still he's 17 and he's in that conversation. Yeah. Like, I think he's going to be fine. So there are going to be a lot of young up and comers because, again, the pandemic was a huge fuel for this because it was outdoor social distancing, etc. We haven't yet seen the effects of that. It's like the moneymaker boom in 2003. The difference, of course, is that was more immediate because people all just jumped into poker who were the right age. But you get the idea where it's like that was the watershed moment. What are the ramifications down the next 5, 10, 20 years?
Well, yeah, and those 10-year-olds that are playing right now, that started playing 2 years ago, the 8-year-olds that their dads would take them out and go play, that type of thing. Yeah, the 10 years from now is when you're going to see the after effects of that, really.
Yep. So that was that. Relatively pleased with it overall. Had a great time. I wish I had gotten hot for a full round to put myself, again, not in the mix to win. I was not going to be good enough to win. Some of the scores at the top, especially given the fact that you could qualify and then your rating could go out of our division to a certain threshold, which makes sense. If you qualify in February and then your rating gets too high, you shouldn't be punished too bad. But there was no way I was winning that tournament. But I would have liked to have made the top 50 or so. So slightly, ever so slightly disappointed. But truth is, again, my final score doesn't reflect the fact that I was right there on the line. So, like, for considering I'm not thrilled with how I played any of the 3 days, stretches, but I'm actually kind of happy. Maybe I guess the benefit of having realistic goals is that now I can be like, yeah, I almost hit it, instead of being like, I wanted to make the final 4, and it's like you had to be top 4
win
because you made the cut Saturday and got to play another round, and then the final 4 in a field of 320, the final 4 got to play in the finals, and it was streamed actually, like they had a crew there covering it. But I was never making the top 4. I could have played out of my mind 2 of the 3 days and not been in that conversation. So at the very least, I walked out of it being like, cool, I have an idea what I need to do. It was much stiffer competition than normal. Let's go get it next year.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the election.
Oh, you wanted to piss me off. Here we go.
I did. There was a mention of a pissed off Dave in the text thread, and now I want to see it come to fruition.
Well, okay. The pissed off Dave was just out. External influences, not so much election, but no, it's more so right now. I'm actually kind of pleased with the way the election went. As someone who identifies right center, I'd say not right. I'm definitely not a MAGA or whatever, but as someone who identifies right center, who is just like thinks that this whole Trumpism thing is just off kilter, so much so, and would rather see a more balanced approach to conservatism. It's really, really nice to see the Trump-backed people get their asses kicked and still freak out about it. Locally, seeing Carrie Lake come in and say, who was our governor nominee from the Republican side, who was very much MAGA, said from the very beginning how she's Donald Trump endorsed, and had the wonderful quote earlier of basically, if I win, it's not rigged, which just hurt my feelings in every way, shape, and form. Losing to the Democratic candidate, Katie Hobbs, who basically did not run a campaign, like, at all. Seeing her lose was a good sign of what people are rejecting in this, and that is Trump and Trumpism. And despite the fact that I heard today he filed whatever paperwork he needed to run for president again in 2024, I think that's going to be a robust rejection of what he stands for. So
yeah, he just declared about an hour or so ago.
Ish, maybe.
I have a work text, so.
Well, yeah, I saw it like right before we came on, just like the news article of like, oh, yeah, file the paperwork.
I mean, it has its own interesting wrinkles, especially with DeSantis being in the mix for the GOP bid, and now they're already sniping at each other. So who knows, and who's the GOP actually going to back? Given this rebuke of what was supposed to be a red wave and/or red tsunami, that certainly was nothing of the sort, given that they didn't win the Senate at all and barely got control of the House. The question is going to be, is that going to lead to the GOP rebuking Donald Trump and this particular branch of what they've become, even though DeSantis is his own kind of special brand of awful? Or is this just a temporary referendum? We're going to be right back here in 2 years. I don't know the answer to that, and we have plenty of time to find out because that's 2024 and we're still in 2022.
Well,
however,
that doesn't mean we're going to talk about it for the next 2 years.
No, we certainly won't, but a lot of people will.
Yes.
To your point, though, yeah, I mean, it was nice to see, and it was also nice to see most candidates conceded in the traditional political fashion and gave concession speeches and like congratulated their opponent, and it was like a bit of a return to form. Now, not all. Certainly, Carrie Lake has not. I don't think she's tweeted again since she tweeted the thing about like Arizonans know this was wrong or whatever it was.
She said BS specifically. Arizonans know this is BS, which is like, oh god.
Which is funny because it's really not self-aware when you could apply that to her and what happened to her and not actually what she means. But that's neither here nor there. Yes, it was hilarious that she lost a campaign to somebody who refused to debate her, and she tried to use like school playground techniques to be, you're scared of it. You won't debate me because you're frightened about you can't talk, and it's like, great. So instead, we had like normally you'd want a campaign to be run on substance. Instead, we had a campaign run on nothing, and a campaign that was nothing. And somehow Katie Hobbs managed to win in a purple/red state. So
yeah,
Yeah, I don't, and some of the defenses that her fans tried to go with here, pretty weak, even by their admittedly low standards. Like, it's rigged because she's the current Secretary of State, so that's why the elections ran in her favor for Hobbs. It's like, yeah, you're right. So she rigged it so that she would win by a really slim margin to put as much attention on it as possible. That seems good, yeah. In fact, she might even fall into the automatic recount range. She's about 0.6% ahead right now, and it's 0.5% in Arizona. So, yeah, she definitely rigged it so she could win by as little as possible, and so that some Republicans still won for other places on the ballot. You got it. It's rigged. That's why
sense.
Fincham lost, too. Yeah, That's why Masters lost. It's all rigged. It's always rigged if you don't win, except that's dangerous when you do win, because then the other side can just be like, it was rigged.
It's rigged.
Uh-oh.
It did make me laugh of how many local races went to. I mean, 6 out of the 9 congressmen went to Republicans. Rigged. It's rigged because 66% went to there. Many local races and state senators, state congressmen, things like that at the local level went Republican. Arizona still is very much a red state, I would say, but we are seeing the rejection of the far right outside of some people obviously are there. Many people I will even say are there. But we're seeing a rejection of that, which I'm kind of proud of my home state for, because I think when you break down, I was hearing somebody on the radio basically saying that the Arizona breaks down to like 33% Democrat, 33% Republican, and like 33% in the middle. So it's that middle people who really decide the election, of course. And all those middle people basically said, I may lean right, but I ain't voting for that crazy lady.
Yeah, it would be nice if we didn't have to have these choices. And some people would be surprised to find out how I voted in certain races. I've talked about a couple of them. I don't know if I want to go super into it on air just because of my line of work. But certainly voted for some Republicans on my ballot. Occasionally that was because I liked the candidate. Most of them were pretty ridiculous, especially like Masters and Fincham and Lake. Never voting for any of them. But some of them were also a rebuke to the Democrats because I thought their candidates sucked. And in some cases it was like, if this is the best you can do with 2 years of planning, then like try again, because you don't just automatically get a vote either just because you represent more of the less insane, I guess, which is kind of an oxymoron. But I'm like, it's not just going to be like some people are like, I'm just going to vote blue down the ballot or red down the ballot. And I'm like, I mean, look, we've talked on the show before about how we're all kind of more moderate in our approach, but I'm like that. If we're getting to the point where it's just vote automatically for every single D or R you see on the ballot, then I think we've lost a point. I really do.
Yeah. And it was, again, like that. It's crazy to me that how it was so much of just rejecting that, because the Democrats have sucked in many ways. Like in a lot of ways, the people measure economy, inflation, those types of things. There's not been a lot of great movement in the way that things were promised in 2020, like student loans, for example. We did pass the $10,000 student loan, but that actually got blocked. So now we got a problem. There's so many things that Democrats have tried to push for, tried to pull for, hasn't happened. Inflation's really high. People are concerned, and yet we still have the control of the Senate in the Democrats' name. We still have a slim majority in the House and the Republicans. So it's kind of crazy how people have been unhappy with Democrats, but yet still voted them back in because they so thoroughly rejected this far right thing.
Well, we can at the very least hope that this presents some kind of sign going forward. And still, I mean, there's plenty of political problems on both sides of the aisle that are going to have to be addressed going forward. But it was not as bad as I expected, as a lot of people expected. And for some people, that's like, well, bad automatically means that you were hoping Democrats had a better outcome. It's like, again, no, I'm just sick and tired of election deniers. That's really all it is. I maybe it's because of the line of work I have, but it's like, this is ridiculous. And the fact that we went through the entire Cyber Ninjas audit for months and for way too much money, and then still people are like, no, it was still fraud. It's like, I like we had people. For those who are not in Arizona, I may not be familiar. We had people in like body armor, just sitting out at polling locations for drop-offs and just being like, "I have a gun, just watching." Yeah. It's not intimidating, I'm just watching. And you're like, and thankfully, again, some of the courts intervened. There was some stuff, but like just the very premise of that, it's like, because it was the whole ballot mule documentary that I'm not even going to name and not going to give a spotlight to, but just like the idea that there's that kind of rampant cheating when it's like, even if you dropped off 50 ballots at once. They still have to be independently verified. It's not as simple as just bringing a stack of ballots to a poll and being like, yep, I rigged the election. So just, you can't have an argument with them, so these people that are really far gone, but my God, I hope something will eventually get through to them because this is ridiculous.
I laugh at that, where it's like, all right, I dropped off 50 ballots. Well, Hobbs won in a close race with 25,000 votes. So I hope you did that 50 ballots, 5,000 times. Then maybe you could get there. Maybe, because that's a lot to do to rig one small election, not an entire country. What always drives me nuts when people say the election was rigged. It's like, look, how many states had lawsuits? How many states judges, Republican appointed judges, might I add, throughout those lawsuits and said there was no validity to them? How many Republican governors who were pressured to not certify these results did? Like, everything, if it were rigged, there could have been so many places that so many different people could step in and do it, and yet they didn't. And these are all independent people. It's not all one big vast conspiracy. So I just can't believe these conspiracies when all of our checks and balances did what they were supposed to do.
And Republican County Board of Supervisors and on down the list. And to your point, if you're a Democrat right now and you're celebrating, I don't know that that's the right response either. I mean, yeah, you can be happy about the outcome, I guess, if you feel like it's in your favor. But at the same time, even with all of these factors we've already mentioned, some of these races were extremely close, and you kept the Senate by a razor-thin margin. So, like, I'm not sure that you can still just be like, well, crisis averted, we're good, I'm going to smack the microphone. Like, yes, it's a favorable outcome if you're on that side, but I'm not sure that you can just be doing cartwheels around the living room right now because, like, as crazy as some of these candidates were and as far off the reservation, they almost still won. And yeah, they didn't, but should you be excited about it being that close? Because to me, I'm like, I don't know how many times we have to keep going through this. Apparently, at least one more election. Probably we're on third election now in a row of just ridiculousness. But I'm like, at some point, common sense has to prevail, right?
Chris, prove to me that it wasn't rigged, right? Prove to me that it was not rigged, and then I'll believe you, right? That's what the argument is at this point, right? It's unfathomable that it's still going on, but I'm just glad that this cycle's over. I can stop getting mailers. I can stop seeing commercials. I can stop getting political text. There we go. That's a topic I can touch on. I don't know if you got the same amount of them, but at least 7 times a day I got a text of saying my mom's name, my wife's name, my sister's name, my dad's name, my name, all texting of constant different things about this candidate supports this or this candidate supports that. And I was like, I can't take it. I blocked every single number, and yet they still came.
I didn't get that. Sean did. If he were here, he could tell you as much. But he got a ton of texts as well. I know other people who did too. I luckily did not. I saw plenty of stupid campaign emails and stuff because it's the newsroom and stuff like that. And boy, like the Nancy Pelosi playbook of like last minute fundraising every other day. Those emails put me off more than damn near anything else. Where it's like, we have a fundraising goal tonight of $45,000 and we're not going to make it without your help. And I'm like, well, Nancy, maybe you should have asked more than 5 hours before the deadline, huh? Figure that out.
I guess we're not going to make it, huh?
Yeah. So if we don't do this, Donald Trump and his allies are going to win. And I'm like, well, then I guess you're going to have a bad time, aren't you? So anyways, yeah, the spam, the TV ads, God, I mean, it was almost refreshing because we were watching some shows streamed in Texas, and I don't know if it was just because of the algorithms or what, but like, we didn't see almost any campaign ads, and that was when I was in Phoenix for the day before we left for Texas. Every commercial break when we were watching a streaming service or live TV was 5 out of 6 commercials of dumbass campaigns, and just I mean, it's nothing new. We've seen vitriolic, exaggerative political ads for a long time, but it just feels like there's more of it than ever because now you're surrounded by it on the traditional media, social media, now texting your own goddamn phone. Like, again, like there has to be a threshold where we're like, enough is enough.
It was interesting for me being in New York City, which is a very predominantly blue city, very, 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 very predominantly blue city. And then still the amount of commercials that were still there, even for their, there was a big Republican push in their city, in New York City. The rest of New York State is actually pretty conservative, but it was just interesting to see how much of a similarity there was on a state that is traditionally so far blue that you can't even crack it. I actually walked by at one of the we were at the ferry to Staten Island, and one of the gubernatorial candidates was there giving an interview right outside the Staten Island ferry, and I kind of walked over like, oh, well, that's interesting. He's just right there. So I kind of sat there and listened for a minute, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm not voting for him because I don't live here, so bye. But it was interesting at least to kind of see that the mania still occurs even in what you would consider a pretty far one side state.
Mm-hmm. And across the country, Dr. Oz lost. That's funny. There's plenty of other results. Has Lauren Boebert officially lost? I think she did.
She was pretty close. I don't know for certain.
I haven't checked recently because we've been so surrounded with our own stuff that, So there was some other stuff that was still, again, a reminder like, hey, maybe there is some reason for optimism. But then again, there's going to be awful candidates in the future from, both sides of the aisle, really. Again, one party I think is more far gone than the other in some of its ranks right now. But I don't know. I just hope that maybe this is a sign that at the very least it's like, all right, maybe the Republican Party can get focused on some of the things that I think it actually does a good job of supporting, especially economical policies, and less focused on conspiracy theory bullshit that shouldn't be wasting our time. That's the hope, the one takeaway. I'm sure there are other people, again, I feel bad talking about this because I'm not as directly affected. There were plenty of people that thought this was going to be more of a referendum on, say, abortion after Roe v. Wade was overturned or some other issues. And for those who are directly affected, I understand maybe the stronger standpoint. For me, I'm like, let's at least start with eliminating the election denialism, and then we can work from there, using that as a basis. Because if you can't get the farthest people to at least stop doing that, there's going to be so many distractions that we can't talk about the actual issues.
So I just looked it up. Boebert is up by 1,050 votes at the moment.
Damn it.
That is, but there's 99% reporting, but only 1,000 votes. I mean, that's not much.
And let's be honest, that was not a race that was supposed to be contended.
No.
And a lot of the projections for this were wrong, but still, that one was not supposed to be close, let alone potentially a loss for her. Yeah. So we'll be interested to see, how that pans out. So, all right. Anything else we want to get off your chest real quick? Or are we signing off?
I'm going back into coaching my son's basketball, which is just going to be even more fun as far as a more stress to add on and busyness to add on to life. So this time in your late 30s, man, it feels like every moment you were doing something and every moment you're not doing something, you're like, oh, fuck, what am I missing? So it's a fun time in life right now. Yeah. I'm glad I have this release, though, at least once an hour a week.
Well, it's nice that we still have this. 551 episodes strong. As a programming reminder, two things. One, we will have shows. Well, we're going to have shows in the foreseeable future. But in December, the 4 weeks are going to be taken up by the Best Games Ever thing that we're going to kind of pre-record and then air live. So, just know that coming up, we'll have a Suns thing. Maybe one more trivia if I can put it together in time. It's going to be iffy with the holiday, but a couple weeks of more regular live shows with the audience, and then we'll be starting that. And the second reminder is about the Best Games Ever one last time because the deadline is Sunday, November 20th. That's this Sunday. So as a final reminder, send us your favorite games list. We'll incorporate it into the whole group vote, and we'll see how everything pans out. Send it to @thebuzzerShow@gmail.com by Sunday. I guess end of day Sunday. I don't care. I'm going to start putting them together that Monday. But send it to that email address, however many you're comfortable with, multiples of 5. We'll include you in the list. We'll make a breakdown on how it all went, and we'll start airing those because I'm really excited for that. We've been wanting to do it for a long time, as I mentioned. It was just like, when do we have time? When is it going to be right? And it was like, it became clear to me a couple months ago. I'm like, I'm going to do this for the 10-year because it's been 10 years. I'm not going to leak a ton about my list, and I'm not 100% final. Every now and then I move something, but I'll tell you this much. A few of my top 25 from 10 years ago didn't even make the cut for a top 50 that we're doing as the main 3. So a lot has changed in 10 years. That's the end of the show. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. Please enjoy the empty chair.
He never showed up. There was a yet, and he never showed up.
I know. I would have prepared a 2-shot if I had known. But I don't have one prepared with you in this particular window, so I couldn't switch to it. It would have just been me and your voice, and I'm like, ha ha.
Because he can hear everything we're saying right now. Theoretically, he's in his room, hearing everything, hearing us talk shit about him, and yet
there's no defense. Nothing. All right, thank you for tuning in. In between episodes, you can find us at our website, objectionnetwork.com or youtube.com/objectionnetwork. As a reminder, we're going through the Pokemon Nuzlocke run. It's been topsy-turvy, and it's only going to get more topsy-turvy in the next few episodes. So go check it out if you haven't. It's doing pretty well. We'll see you next week with a regular episode. Goodbye.